Welcome to the new series of Speak Up, the television and social media platform for Freemasonry in New Zealand. I am Barry Rushton, your host, and thank you for joining us this evening. Do we have a special guest tonight? We closed out last year's program with a full half hour of the Grand Master of New Zealand, Most Worshipful Brother Mark Winger. We are delighted that the brand new Grand Master, Most Worshipful Brother Graham Wrigley, again gives us the honour of being with us tonight, also for the full half hour on our final show. We talk about the man, his hopes, his dreams, his past, and the future direction he desires to lead Freemasonry New Zealand over these next 3 years. Once again, I have the best seat in the house. I have this program, 30 Minutes, with the new Grand Master, Graham Wrigley. Nice to see you, sir. Thank you for being with us today.
Pleasure to be with you.
Oh, it is great to have you. You know, you've been barely Grand Master now for about 3 or 4 days.
That's right.
And you are following in some great Grand Master footsteps. Of course, the outgoing Grand Master is tremendous, as many before him. But we're talking about people like Lord Plunkett and sort of Jellicoe, sort of Viscount Bledisloe, Arthur Porritt, Keith Holyoake. What a great honour. You must feel absolutely just proud and wonderful.
Absolutely proud moment. I think I'm number 81.
81
on the list.
81.
And whilst there's some famous people there's a lot of local New Zealanders who have also been Grand Master of Freemasons New Zealand. So a very proud moment.
Many, many distinguished men have been Grand Master.
Absolutely.
And you join a great group.
Absolutely.
What I would like to do, if it's okay with you, is I'd like to talk to Graham Wrigley, the man.
Sure.
And then Graham Wrigley, the Grand Master. And then I'd like us perhaps to have a look at some of the regalia that you do wear, and perhaps give you a chance to sort of explain some of those things as we go along.
That sounds
good. Are you happy with that?
That's good.
So, the career, the Graham Wrigley, the man, right?
Yeah.
Started off, one of the things one of the highlights of your life, of course, is your involvement within the Fire Brigade arena. Tell us how that all started and where that went to.
Well, it was a strange start really, Barry, because I was a watchmaker by trade.
That's right.
And the hairdresser 2 shops along from where I was doing my apprenticeship was a volunteer fireman. And when the siren went up, he used to run past, and when he came back, he used to come and tell us what was going on. And he said one day, have you ever thought about being a volunteer fireman? And I thought, no, I just thought they came with the town, you know.
Yeah.
And the end result of that was he introduced me to it, and that was an opportunity. I was 18 years old and became a volunteer fireman and moved out of home at the same time and lived on the fire station with some other volunteer firemen, and that started a career.
In Harawa.
In Harawa.
I used to live in New Plymouth. You know, I had a friend in Harawa, and it's a great little spot, and still is.
The Taranaki area.
But you started as a volunteer.
Yes.
But in actual fact, your career ended up as being the fire chief of Wellington. Is that correct? The commander-in-chief?
Chief Fire Commander of Wellington.
Which is,
yeah.
you know, that's a huge step.
Yeah, it was an interesting career because when I was the volunteer fireman, I wanted to go full-time. I saw that as a career. And the chief at the time said, if you want to become a full-time fireman, then you need to get your father's permission to break your apprenticeship to become a full-time fireman. And so I went home, said to my parents, could I leave my apprenticeship and become a full-time fireman? And the answer was no. A trade is important.
Yeah.
So that was the end of that. And when I went back to the chief and said, no, they won't let me, he said, I didn't think they will. In hindsight, I think he'd already talked to them. But when it came to the end of the apprenticeship, he arranged for me to have an interview for the fire service in Wellington. And a couple of weeks later, I moved down there and started a permanent career as a firefighter.
I think it probably would be fair to say that because of the type of organisation it is, it's so community-based.
Yes.
That I'm sure that probably was the seed of the way that you view the values, community values, and working for community efforts. I'm sure there's a part of you.
Absolutely. Look, I think you see life from a different angle. You see people in distressed circumstances. I say now, you know, I've pulled people out of burning buildings and out of cars, and you see tragedy, you see people suffering from tragedy, and you see how important the volunteer community is within a small community that doesn't have a paid staff. So you get volunteers that work in the local hairdressing shop, the watchmaker, that actually goes and responds to the public to serve the community. Taught me tremendous values in that. And even when I went full-time as a paid staff member, you never lost touch with the community because you were there to serve them.
Exactly. But your career didn't stop there, you see. I know that you, I think, had the prestigious recognition of being the first or perhaps only person outside the UK to actually go to a very prestigious course in the UK. Tell us about that.
That was the Brigade Command course,
That's
which
right.
is the qualifying course to become a Chief Fire Officer in Great Britain.
Wow.
Well, in fact, the United Kingdom. And New Zealand had been trying to get somebody onto that course for many years. And the Home Office was saying, you don't meet the standards and, you know, we have a different process over there. So we, in New Zealand, went through a recruitment process for it. I think 13 people put their name into it. I was the most junior of the qualified people to apply. And at that time I was an assistant commander in Dunedin. And I thought, I'll have a go at this. I think it would be quite good to do it. Went through 3 days of psych testing and checking and interviews and processes. That all went over to England and I got accepted onto the course. And that started on the 1st of January and finished at the end of March. So it was 4 months.
Fantastic.
Well, three months and a bit after that as well, almost 4 months.
But added to that, which I know you're probably very humble not to even sort of add to it, but you were invited back to that organisation several times, right, to be a guest lecturer.
Yeah,
it was a great honour that must have been.
It was, it certainly was. It was a few years later. I had worked my way through the Institution of Fire Engineers, and the Brigade Command course, they only run one once a year, and they always bring in a strategic manager from somewhere in the world for a one only session. Yeah. So I came over and did the one session, 3 days of strategic management with the crews, and they invited me back 3 more times after that, which was quite unusual, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Now, of course, you know, fire engines go flying past my office all the time, and you're always intrigued, you know, about where they're going. You never hear where they've gone, what they've done, or anything. But I know that you were involved in a number of high-profile fires, especially in Wellington, the Parliament ones, and of course that you were head of the fire department response at Aramoana, that tragedy down there. Are you permitted to talk a little bit about those 2 events?
Oh, look, in general terms, the Aramoana shootings was my first command as a Chief Fire Officer. And I still remember getting the phone call at night to say there was a house on fire at Aramoana. And I thought, why are you calling me? And the control room said, well, somebody's firing bullets at the fire engine. So one didn't know the full story at that particular time. And it wasn't until I got out there that I realised what it was. And spent quite some time there, and the follow-up afterwards because of the trauma that went with it as well. So I really led the fire service side of the operations there under the direction of the police. So that was quite a nerve-wracking experience, but one that set the scene again for community values, because there were a lot of people affected by that in particular. The Wellington one, as the Chief of Wellington, you tend to go to less fires the higher you go up in the hierarchy, but when you do go, they're the bigger ones. And they were refurbishing the Parliament buildings and had 2 major fires in there during that period. So I commanded both of those. I don't tell that story very often now because people say, why didn't you let it burn? Yeah.
Fantastic. I mean, I was in Wellington just recently for the WOW Awards and I had time up my sleeve, so I went to the Parliament buildings and had actually had a walk through and went into the debating chamber, and it was sensational. Yeah. And I saw some information about the fire, and I think it was 1917 or 1922, the one that really sort of took the whole building down. So both those were huge.
Well before my time.
I understand that, indeed. I understand that. Yeah. Now, I know that you now have a high position within Red Cross. Again, another community value organisation.
Yes.
Tell us why obviously why you would have joined them, but tell me what you enjoy about being in this new role.
Well, with the Red Cross, I retired from the fire service as I turned 50 on a decision made at the spur of the moment more than anything else, a change of career before you turn 50, after you turn 50. And then I looked around for something else to do, and the skills with Red Cross seemed to fit. I went there as the regional director of the Canterbury West Coast region. That was working with volunteers, community programs, and again that had that natural fit for the experience that I'd actually had in the fire service working with people. So I enjoyed that, but as the organisation evolved, I sort of ended up as the head of education and training. So it's the commercial side of the Red Cross business that I run now, which is the first aid training, first aid kits, defibrillators and all that equipment. So the work I do now makes the donated dollar go further.
Right. Now I'd quite like to leave the career path just for a moment, and last week's program we had the past Grand Master Mark Winger on, and I fired some quick fire questions at him, and I'd quite like to do the same with you just for half a dozen.
Sure.
Are you okay with that?
Sure.
So can you remember what your best childhood memory was?
I think as a family, in my early days as a child, Sundays were the day the family really came together, and you'd go white baiting or the picnic down at the river and all that sort of thing, and we always did that as a family. It was the event where everybody went out and you visited the relations and the grandmother and all that sort of thing. And I think I enjoyed that connection, and I always remember that.
If you had a chance for a do-over, one do-over in life, what do you think, what would you do different?
Interesting, I was asked that question the other day. Career-wise, I wouldn't change a thing. I would, if I had the opportunity as a youngster to join the fire service again and take that career, I would have done that again. I would have approached it slightly different, perhaps with the experience, but it was a career that never let me down and did great things for me. My career with the Red Cross has been much the same. So I've enjoyed those, and I think it's because of the people side. So what would I change? Not a lot.
Not a lot.
I've enjoyed every moment of it.
Now, you of course have done and will do a lot of travel in your time up until now, but if there was a place that you'd like to go to, where would that be and why would you want to go?
In the world?
In the world.
I enjoy London.
Wow.
I've travelled extensively. When I was the international president of the Institution of Fire Engineers, I went to England 4 times a year for 7 years. So I got to know the UK quite well. And then with the Grand Master Mark Winger, we were in London again a couple of years ago. And I enjoy London. And I always had the ambition to go to a concert in the Royal Albert Hall, but never saw the opportunity of doing that, and we both achieved that.
Did you?
And we had the best seats in the house.
What did you see?
It was the 300-year celebrations of the Grand Lodge,
of course,
and we went to that, and I think we were sitting about 3 boxes away from the Duke, and
a little nod and a wink.
well, I don't think he knew we were there, but well, certainly knew the Grand Master was there. But in terms of our enjoyment, it was a fantastic experience and a one-off.
Great. For some reason, you could just keep 2 possessions that you had. What would they be?
2 possessions would probably be, well, actually 2 photograph albums I've got. One is of the story of my life, and the other's the family.
Okay, very good. How do you spend your free time? I know you probably don't have much.
I don't have any at the moment. No. Look, I'm a bit of a workaholic in the sense, and that, don't let that sound wrong.
No.
I enjoy what I do, but I enjoy time with myself. I like thinking, and then I like the process of connecting with people. I'm a coffee lover, and I enjoy going out with weekends for coffee and meeting up with people and talking. I'm not a person that has a great interest in reading books every night. Mm-hmm. I do read, but my real hobby is people.
What are you most afraid of?
Oh, good grief. I think the ageing process. You know, I think...
Well, I was going to ask you that very question. What age do you think you are right now?
Quite young.
Great.
Quite young.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair comment, you know, because I can remember my grandfather, and you look around, and he did look old.
Yes.
And I'm pretty sure I'm close to his age, you know.
Well, I can remember saying when my father died at the age of 52, and my father was a Freemason as well, but when he died at 52 years of age, I remember saying to somebody, well, he had a good innings type thing. But when you go back into the late 60s, people back from the war looked like old men. They had suffered badly, I think, and I think my father had as well. But I remember saying that, I think my father, you know, had a good life type thing. Yeah. And then you suddenly realise, when I left the fire service, I'm the same age as my father was when he passed away, but I've never felt old.
Great.
And I think that's a mental thing.
Just a couple more. What's a perfect day look like for you?
A perfect day is the unknown, and I've always said, and it goes back to my fire service career and my current work with the Red Cross, is that every day is totally different. In the fire service, you never knew what events were going to occur. At what time you might be sitting behind the desk, the next time you might be in the smoke and in the heat of it all, or the next time you might be presenting a service badge to somebody or doing something different. So a perfect day for me is the unknown, and I enjoy that, where you go, you know roughly what you're going to be doing for the day, but it takes its own life, and you go with the flow and do what you need to do.
Right.
It's not a perfect day in that sense.
It's hard to look inside yourself, but what do you think your strongest quality is?
Probably more logic than anything else. I think I'm a feet on the ground person. I've had a lot of mentors in my life, 2 heroes in particular, that have actually guided me in that area, and I think I understand the practicalities of things and can put things in perspective that has some natural logic that makes sense.
Thank you for that. That's a lovely little insight for people. I mean, it's just just get the feel of the man, you know. I'd like to leave that now and sort of talk a little bit more about your Masonic career and what's happening in your Masonic life at this time. Of course, there's one final question I have to slide in before we get off this. Did you ever remotely think when you first joined Freemasonry that you would actually end up being the Grand Master of New Zealand?
Not at all. Not at all. Never had that focus. I enjoyed Freemasonry through going into the lodge and then becoming the master of a lodge. Never really saw much beyond that, and then District Grand Director of Ceremonies and District Grand Master, and things evolved, and I think right place at right time. But I never had that on my horizon, that one day I will be the Grand Master of New Zealand. It's just a delight, but this way it evolved.
Grand Master, as an organisation, Freemasonry, are we winning?
I think we are. I've seen growth. We've done surveys over the last 3 years, and there's been good progress made with the strategic plan that we now have in place. Lodges are becoming engaged. They're talking freely about Freemasonry through the Speak Up for Freemasonry campaign. So there are certain gains that are being made, and I think that is a winning streak. And it's a change of culture as well, where people are now seeing the relevance and the ability to operate as Freemasons at the work we're doing.
Do we have a winning strategy, do you think? What I mean by that is there 2, 3, 4 strategic positions that you want to take, are already taken, that you think will help us keep winning in the future?
As I've been working as the Deputy Grand Master, the feedback I've been getting is that the Speak Up for Freemasonry campaign has been one of the best things that we've ever done. And the reason for that is that people have been empowered. And I want to continue that empowerment. So I'm going to add, and I announced this at the Grand Installation, 2 other aspects to Speak Up. Slightly refreshed in the Speak Up campaign, but also to step up, to actually do something, to engage and to be a part of a change and be involved. And the third one will be the Show Up, which is the visibility of Freemasonry in the community. So we'll have Speak Up for Freemasonry, Step Up for Freemasonry, and Show Up for Freemasonry. And that will engage with people and their communities.
I think it's, and you'd agree too, in the past there has been this perception that Freemasons or even Grand Lodges, is fairly sort of staid sort of organisation. Do you think that we as an organisation are delivering a superior customer sort of value package as efficiently as possible? And I say that in the sense that a lot of the baby boomers now are getting older, and we have a number of the millennials coming in. I won't say they're looking for something different, because we do have great pageantry and great parts of Freemasonry that will continue no matter what. But do you think we are moving with the times to actually allow these millennials, I'll call them millennials, to actually get value out of becoming a Freemason?
I think the time is right, Barry. I look at it from the point of view of being a baby boomer myself, coming through that. And I look back at the skip generation of people who didn't come into Freemasonry, that didn't follow a father. And I'm a classic example of that. My father was a Freemason for about 25 years. I didn't know anything about Freemasonry. He passed away, as I said, at the age of 52, and I was only 21 at the time, but didn't know anything about it. The opportunity to become a Freemason then wasn't present. It was suggested, but I didn't know enough about it. So I became a Freemason many, many years later, into my 40s. But there are people now looking at that skip generation and saying, this is something that I could do and want to be a part of. And I get absolute delight when you see a 22-year-old talking to a 92-year-old person, and they've got values and talking the same language and understanding each other. So I think that's what we're offering as well. But that skip generation is now coming into play.
Do you innately feel that you've got a winning team around you?
Absolutely, absolutely. The processes over the last 3 years and slightly beyond that has been to make sure the right people are coming up through the system to do the right jobs at the right place at the right time. The District Grand Masters are a good team this time, as they have been in the past. We've also got good Divisional Grand Masters, and you've had 1 or 2 of them on this program as well. They are great people. The Deputy Grand Master that's working with me has been a District Grand Master and a Divisional Grand Master, understands the craft immensely, as does the President of the Board. So that's a winning team.
Correct. Grand Master, you don't become a Grand Master unless you've got qualities that people admire. And part of that, of course, is inspiration. You can't do everything yourself, as we know, and that's why I asked you about the team. So you believe this whole package you have is going to be inspirational for all of us?
It's been a part of my life for over 50 years, where I've worked with teams and people and empowered people, led teams with philosophy and direction, and rewarded accordingly. I think that's my biggest asset in this type of role, where you actually empower people to deliver the vision that you have and the strategy that Freemasons New Zealand have in place, and give the guidance to actually make them deliver on what they want to in their community. And I think I've got that. I've done it for so long time.
I think the final question I'd like to ask you, because it's more of a personal one, I think it's personal, but one that's an interest to me. Do you feel that you'd like to strongly rekindle the journey of an entered apprentice through to Master Mason, to Worshipful Master in actual fact.
To Worshipful Master. The journey is available through all aspects of Freemasonry for anyone that wants to open those doors and go through them. Not everybody wants to be the master of a lodge, but the channels to do that and to learn and to gain knowledge about Freemasonry should be available to everyone, and people should choose their own path through that. Some people are scared by the opportunity to be a master of a lodge and may wait years and years and years to do it, but when they do it, they feel it's right and they do a great job. I think the pathway needs to be there and the encouragement needs to be there, but it has to be the call of the individual that they want to do that and commit to it.
That I totally agree with, and you'll see, even from my own being, that number of people who come into Freemasonry like timid little mice, and then the time they reach master, they are so confident on their feet, and that is one of the strengths or part of what being a Freemason is all about, to be frank. You know. I'd like to see that happen though in the lodges, that people have a desire to get to the Worshipful Master.
I heard just the other night somebody say that, and they named a person, and I can't remember the name, but made the comment that he used to stutter and was scared to go into the chair as Master of the Lodge, but did eventually and doesn't stutter anymore.
I bet that's true.
And I've heard that 2 or 3 times in terms of public speaking as well. So that's the opportunities that people can take out of Freemasonry.
Great. Well, we've got some photos now up on the, what's coming very shortly, of the wonderful celebration of last Saturday,
Yes.
where you were installed as the Grand Master in New Zealand. And in these photos, of course, you're going to see yourself in this great refinery that the Grand Master has. And so I'd quite like to, at this time, just ask you to, just go over some of these things for interest to the people who are watching.
Sure.
Some of the reasons you do adorn yourself with the particular, especially the one that you've got around your neck at the moment. We'll start with that one in a minute. But maybe you can explain a few of these other things and the relevance and the significance of them, because I'm interested myself.
Absolute pleasure to do that.
So let's start with your, can I call it, it's not a necklace, what can I?
Collarette.
A collarette. Let's start, shall I say that? Let's start with the collarette. It looks beautiful.
So this is the Grand Master's collarette, and every past Grand Master has a similar one, so it recognises that you have been a Grand Master of Freemasons New Zealand. It carries the coat of arms of the Freemasons of New Zealand in the centre, the standard compasses.
Now, Grand Master, we have, of course, this lovely, what's called apron, and I'll just put it up here for the camera to get a quick little view of. That's great. And in this, perhaps if I lay it down here just a little bit, you can actually explain and tell us a little bit about this.
Certainly. This is the Grand Master's apron. The style is standard for Grand Lodge. So the overall apron, as you said, is for the Grand Master, and it's full of symbolism in many ways to explain. So the first and most obvious part is the sun, which forms the centre of the apron. And the sun is the centre of the universe, and you can see that the rays are all moving outwards across the universe. So what that is really saying is it's a sovereignty, it's the head of the order, the centre of the universe, and all things to Freemasonry within this jurisdiction. So that's the first part of that. Then you come down here to the lotuses, which are a form of lily, which represents, in terms of Freemasonry, the purity of the whiteness, and it's used symbolically in a lot of our ceremonies. And then you come to cornucopias over here, which is the emblems of plenty within Freemasonry. These are symbolical. A lot of people refer to these as being squares or perpendiculars, but they're just one of both. They're more decorative than one or the other. A lot of people think they're a level, but they're actually a level and a perpendicular combined, but they mean nothing more than that. You come over to here, you've got the 7 individual parts of the wheat, and the 7 has a symbolic meaning within Freemasonry as well, but wheat is used in the terms of grain, bread, harvest and abundance. So that's quite symbolic with Freemasonry as well. The most interesting one to talk about for me is the pomegranates, which are over here, and they are an unusual fruit in the sense that they have something like 600 seeds in it. So it talks about abundance. I think I read there was 613, however they worked that out, seeds within the pomegranates. And again, with the Masonic meaning, that's the abundance of everything out.
It's absolutely delightful to look at, isn't it? I mean, it's really terrific. And of course, you're adorned with the collar. This is the collar. Maybe we can actually put that on you. How about I do that, eh?
I could do that.
You could do that? great. It's a beautiful collar, isn't it?
Absolutely beautiful. And again, it carries the symbolism as well. In this case here, you still have the square, the compasses and the semicircle, which we talked about on the jewel before. That's repeated. The all-seeing eye in the centre as well, and again with radiation coming out from the centre. So the interesting part about the compasses itself is that our requirements, these are set to 45 degrees. But there's no reason for that.
Okay.
And in some jurisdictions it's set at 36 degrees. And there's some strange reasons for that. But if you look at the history, there's no set reason at all. But it's just the way it looks better, I think, in terms of this. But you'll see measurements on the semicircle there. That's the division of a day and the dividing up of time.
And then the others around, basically...
Around at the stars, in this case for Grandmaster, there's 11 of them, starting for the odd number in the centre there, which is slightly different to the rest, and then you go out for the remaining stars. So you get 10 there. 11 is the rank of the Grandmaster, and it drops down in odd numbers from there on. And in between that, interlaced, is the Grand Lodge of New Zealand.
I see.
So that's what that
means there as well. Until you get close to it like that.
Yes, yeah. It's a beautiful chain.
It is fantastic.
Yeah.
Grandmaster, thank you for that. Thank you for being on the show. It's been really great, and thank you for taking the time to. And we really do wish you, the greatest of your term, as your predecessors had and other Grandmasters. We thank you for the support. You have been supportive of the show. We're trying to do our little bit for Speak Up, as you know, and hopefully under your guidance that we'll be back next year and the year after. But we certainly do wish you the best for your term. Thank you again.
Thank you for that, and I've enjoyed the opportunity.
Well, once again, a big thank you to the new Grandmaster, Most Worshipful Brother Graham Wrigley. Well, this is the last of the shows for 2019 for Speak Up, and we thank you for being part of its success. So on behalf of all of us here in Speak Up, Graham Houston, our regular contributor, Gerard Smith, the executive producer, director, and myself, Barry Rushton, host, we wish you a wonderful festive time and a prosperous new year. And we hope that you'll join us again in 2020. Until then, Merry Christmas.